We start today with the United States hosting a summit with its allies to discuss a new and longer-term goal to defeat Russia. Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin welcomed the participations from over 40 other countries for emergency talks in a US airbase in Germany. This crucial meeting has been scheduled after the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned of a real risk of a new world war. It's been dubbed as the Ukraine Defence Consultative Group, and the US has vowed to move heaven and earth to help Ukraine win its battle against Russia.
Sir, it's an honor to have you here. And, it is an extraordinary gathering with more than 40 countries represented here today. And we're here to help Ukraine win the fight against Russia's unjust invasion and to build up Ukraine's defenses for tomorrow's challenges. Now, that visit only underscored my sense of urgency, an urgency that I know that we all share. So I'd like this whole group today to lead with a common and transparent understanding of Ukraine's near-term security requirements, because we're going to keep moving heaven and earth so that we can meet them.
America's long-term goal is not just to win the war, but to defeat Russia so decisively that it will be deterred from launching such an attack ever again, as conveyed by the US Defense Secretary after his trip to Kiev. The US is already the biggest supplier of military aid to Ukraine. At the talks, the German Defense Minister has also agreed to give the go-ahead to the delivery of used Gepard anti-aircraft tanks to Ukraine. The move towards heavy weapon deliveries marks a turning point for Germany's so far more timid backing for Kiev, which has put Chancellor Olaf Scholz under fire at home and abroad. Well, our correspondent Susan Tarani is joining us live now from New York City. Well, Susan, look, the United States is clearly keeping up again its diplomatic push to try and help Ukraine. How important do you feel this meeting has been in Germany?
Right. Again, the United States really showing a unified stance and demonstrating that an extraordinary show of strength, notably with, again, the United States leading this defense meeting at Ramstein Air Base, not really by accident. And also those comments coming from Lloyd Austin. We touched upon it a little bit yesterday, but then we heard again, he talked about America's long-term goals in helping Ukraine, and he ultimately said that it was to weaken Russia. And this is really a departure, despite what this administration says that it has always been its foreign policy goals, but it's a departure of what we've been hearing since the beginning of this war, where it's really right now an offensive stance as opposed to a defensive stance that the United States has been taking in assisting Ukraine, where it sort of waited to see how Vladimir Putin would act, and then it would act in respect to that. And now we're seeing that perhaps, first of all, the United States and its allies may anticipate that this war will be longer than they had anticipated, and second of all, their long-term goal is really to quote-unquote weaken Russia. So definitely a show of strength, of defiance on the one hand from NATO member states, and on the other, we really did hear, I think for the first time, that the goal is for Ukraine to quote-unquote win. Again, something that we really hadn't heard in so many words from the United States in the past month or so.
And Susan, as you mentioned there really is this shift, this idea that it will be a much longer-term conflict than was initially thought. As a result, what more do you think we can expect from the Biden administration when it comes to helping Ukraine over potentially the coming weeks and coming months?
Right, so there's been this commitment of sending more lethal weaponry, more heavy-style weapons that we hadn't seen before. It's the kind of weapons that this administration is sending in right now. There is a cause for concern regarding that because ultimately that was something that the Biden administration was somewhat holding back on in fear of not provoking Vladimir Putin on the one hand, being cautious, and then on the other hand, we see that this is sort of accelerating, and there are concerns, some members on Capitol Hill, that this might accelerate and maybe turn into an open proxy war. On the other hand, there is an open conversation about how U.S. military personnel outside of Ukraine will be training Ukrainian forces in handling these weapons. And then we also heard that there'll be more sanctions imposed. The European Union is working on a 6th round of sanctions being imposed. But then again, you know, the open question is what happens if this war drags on? These weapons continue to go into Ukraine. These sanctions don't have the effect that they intend to have, then what will be the strategy? And I think that when you ask policymakers and politicians here in the United States, they really don't have an answer to that. They keep saying that, well, we have to exhaust all of these means and then see what we have to do. And I think that's a concerning answer when we get that answer.
Thanks, Susan. That was Susan Tarani joining us live from New York City.